High-power Democrats are coalescing around Vice President Harris. The former Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi, just endorsed the vice president, calling her support for Kamala Harris official, personal, and political. Meanwhile, the Trump campaign was quick to push out its first attack ads on the vice president, accusing her of covering up Biden's, quote, obvious mental decline. But the reality is that this late change in the race is a blow to the Republican plan of action after spending months shaping their strategy around one simple fact: Joe Biden being their opponent. Former Republican strategist Sarah Longwell joins me now from Washington to discuss the state of play. Sarah, it's only been like a couple of days. You were back on with me on Friday. And whoa, so much has changed. We've been discussing this throughout the hour, maybe not that big of a surprise that Joe Biden ultimately decided that he will withdraw. That having been said, political earthquake here, given that Kamala Harris has received his endorsement and now appears to be the nominee. How is this playing out in Republican circles?
Well, look, there is no doubt about it. Donald Trump's campaign wanted to run against Joe Biden. They have made this campaign about age and mental acuity, which was always a little bit of a gamble for Donald Trump, considering that after Joe Biden, Donald Trump is the oldest nominee for president in the United States' history. And so now that Joe Biden is gone, Donald Trump is the oldest nominee for president ever. And he is going to have to now live in the frame that he created. He's going to have to run against a much younger nominee who's going to have a vice president who is also young and they're going to be able to run on generational change and on change in general. I mean, I cannot tell you how many focus groups I have sat through, and I do at least one a week, if not more. People were so down on this choice. The reason that the term double haters became the term for the persuadable voters this time is there were so many people who just did not want this rematch. Now they've got something fresh. And look, people are going to say things like, well, Kamala, she was in the administration. The fact is, I've listened to voters talk about Kamala for a long time, and she doesn't have a particularly positive impression from swing voters. However, the main thing they say about her is they're like, I don't know what she does. I don't ever see her. What does she even do? Well, she has the chance to reset that narrative now. And I think by being energetic, by going on offense against Trump, by prosecuting a case against Trump, something Joe Biden had become incapable of doing, she can really turn this race around. And I think that you can just see the new energy in it. And that has got Donald Trump's campaign completely freaked out because they built this thing to run against Joe Biden, and now they're not.
Yeah, Tim Alberta had a lengthy profile on the Trump campaign called "Trump is Planning for a Landslide Win," and that's really where the momentum was just a few weeks ago going into the convention. Then you had the assassination attempt, and then you had the more positive news headed his way from the documents case being dismissed by the judge there. And now Tim Alberta tweeted, really cannot overstate how problematic this is for Trump's operation, obviously that being the fact that Biden withdrew from the race. Everything they built was customized for a contest with Biden, and I mean everything. Clearly, they now have time for opposition research against Kamala Harris. How are you hearing, how are you seeing this play out in terms of this new scramble they find themselves in?
Well, first of all, I just want to say that we may look back on this moment as the time when Donald Trump's campaign peaked. And it will have peaked too early. For a minute there, it looked like he couldn't catch a bad break. Everything was going his way. Like you just said, the cases were getting dismissed. Everything else was pushed out too far to be litigated before this election. He had this convention that was focused on Biden, focused on the party, looking unified. Everything's different now. Everything's different. And I do think that, look, they are going to, what they're going to do is they're going to bring out the absolute worst in Donald Trump and in his supporters. You already hear them saying it, where they call Kamala Harris, a DEI president. And they'll try to do that. They'll try to run that play. But that doesn't reflect particularly well on them. I think they have a lot of concerns about the fact that she can make this race much more about abortion than Joe Biden was capable of doing. And most importantly, Kamala Harris has the ability to go on offense and prosecute a case against Donald Trump. She has the ability to make this about him, which was the problem for them, for their campaign, for Trump's campaign. They knew they were going to be able to make this about Joe Biden. And for a long time, they had. And now Kamala Harris and whoever she chooses to serve vice president can make this election a referendum on Donald Trump. And if it is a referendum on Donald Trump, he will lose.
A referendum on Donald Trump is interesting because up until now, it clearly had been a referendum on Joe Biden, and that's why there was so much concern within the Democratic Party, because that's not what they wanted to focus on. I'm curious if her strength is focusing specifically on reproductive rights and abortion in a way that perhaps President Biden hadn't been so strong on hitting. Some are worried in the party itself about what are her perceived weaknesses, and that are some of the stumbles that she had early on in this administration, particularly as it came to immigration, which is the biggest priority for Trump and for many Republicans and undecided voters as well. Let's play some sound from her that will undoubtedly be used by Republicans here.
I want to be clear to folks in this region who are thinking about making that dangerous trek to the United States-Mexico border. Do not come. Do not come. The United States will continue to enforce our laws and secure our border.
Well, that clearly wasn't enough of a threat. Don't come. What can she do in your view? Obviously, you're not advising her, but what could she do to regain the momentum on this particular issue?
I mean, look, I think that she should be able to go on offense and say there was a deal on the table. Democrats worked with conservatives like James Lankford, and they put forward a tough immigration bill, and Donald Trump scuttled it. And the Republicans scuttled it because they wanted the issue, because they wanted the border as an issue. And so I think that Joe Biden struggled to sort of go on offense in that way, to reframe the debate. And look, the fact is the Biden administration has been more recently much tougher on immigration. It's too late, or it is late for them to do it. And the fact is they are vulnerable on immigration, but she should be able to point to the fact that they have made substantive changes here in the last few months that are working at the border, and to be able to say that Republicans had a chance to solve this problem and they refused to. And I think Joe Biden struggled sometimes to make these affirmative cases, but she, with her ability to prosecute this case, should be able to do it.
What do you make? How seriously do you take these threats from the Speaker of the House, saying that there will be lawsuits now on Democrats basically disenfranchising 14 million votes throughout the primaries that went to Joe Biden, now him, and you're already hearing it, that Democrats are using this as a coronation for Kamala Harris. This isn't a democratic process. Donald Trump himself has called this a coup. Does this narrative have legs to stand on?
I don't think Republicans know what a coup is. I don't think they understand what that word means. A coup, an attempted coup, is when you have, let's say, a group of rioters that attack a Capitol, and they go inside and they try to overturn the results of an election. And when the president actually incites them to do that and refuses to accept the election results, like that was a violent attempt at a coup. This is a president doing what he is constitutionally capable of doing, which is stepping aside, and his vice president taking over as the nominee. And I don't think that there's anybody who thinks that the Democratic primary, which was essentially uncontested, I don't think anybody thinks that is overturning the will of the people, especially since in all of the polling, it showed that roughly 70% of voters wanted Joe Biden to step aside. And so I don't think that narrative has legs. What it does show you how afraid these Republicans are against running against anybody who isn't Joe Biden. That's what this is. And it's funny because the last time they took legal action like this, it was to try to keep Joe Biden out of the White House. And now they're trying to keep Joe Biden using legal action to keep him in the White House because they want to run against him. But I'm not a lawyer, but this smacks of desperation. I don't think it has legs to stand on.
Quickly, yes or no, do you think that there will be a debate now between Trump and Harris?
Yes. I think,
Okay.
I mean, again, she should go on offense on this and
Yeah.
goad him into doing it.
Yeah, he's already saying ABC won't be fair. It should be done on Fox News. We'll see where that falls. In the
That's
meantime,
embarrassing for him.
Sarah Longwell, I'm sure we'll be speaking very soon. Thanks so much for joining us.